Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day to everyone. I am presenting this for the International Conference on Interdisciplinary Research in Social Sciences and Technology, ICIRSST 2022. My name is Aiman Halim and I'm going to present my research on Tahfiz students' perception of game-based learning for English language education. As a start, this research was conducted in Malaysia. So, with regard to the education system, it can be mainly categorized into two, which is the formal education in public or private secular schools, and informal education, which includes the religious education in Tahfiz. And when we are talking about Tahfiz institution or Tahfiz schools, we are talking about a place where students are learning and memorizing Al-Quran. But wherever we are, whether in public schools or private schools, our Malaysian curriculum, despite many changes and many different policies throughout the years, the Sijil Pelajaran Malaysia or SPM is still the standardized assessment before students graduate from the secondary school and before they move on to the tertiary education. And English subject is one of the core subject that the students will be taking in the SPM examination. But based on many researchers, unfortunately, many students are still showing slow mastery of the English language subject. So in this research, what we are doing is we are using game-based learning with hopes that students, Tahfiz students specifically, would be more interested and motivated in learning the English language subject. So there are three objectives for this research. The first one is to evaluate the effectiveness of game-based English language learning in increasing Tahfiz students' knowledge. And the second objective is to evaluate the effectiveness of game-based English language learning in strengthening Tahfiz students' skills and personal development. And the third and last objective is to evaluate the effectiveness of game-based English language learning in building the attitude for knowledge sharing among Tahfiz students. With regard to the literature review, I'm going to cover three items in this presentation. Namely, the first one is the English language education, and then on Tahfiz schools, as well as the game-based learning for English language. So starting with English language education, specifically in Malaysia, despite all the shifts in education and curriculum policies in our country, SPM still retains its role as the standardized assessment. So among the core subjects that students must take is English language, hence the importance of mastering English language among the school students. And when we are talking about Tahfiz schools, there are many issues and problems regarding Tahfiz schools. As mentioned by Ta'at, Talib and Mohsin, among the issues include the institutional objective, the quality of education, uniformity of the syllabus, finance, as well as students' future career. But for this research, we are focusing more on the curriculum aspect because the problem with regard to curriculum is only a handful of Tahfiz schools implement the national curriculum while still maintaining their religious-based learning. There are some Tahfiz that disregard the national curriculum altogether and just focus on their religious-based learning, memorizing of Quran. And when we talk about game-based learning, of course, based on numerous researchers, games are, of course, tools that educators can use to improve learners' outcomes across many areas. And the nature of game-based learning will always be learner-centered and they can be adjusted to be in synchronization with the learning objective, the age of learners, and their proficiency level. And when we apply game-based learning for English language, there are many previous research that had applied game-based learning for English. That includes research by Ni et al., that found the students had shown improvement in their vocabulary skills as well as other skills: cooperation, collaboration, communication, creative and critical thinking skills when game-based learning is used for English language. On the same page, Rahma and Astutik, with their research on madrasah in Indonesia, found that Sharat's game has a significant positive influence on madrasah students' vocabulary skills. And research by Tahmid et al. Found that using game-based learning, specifically Pictionary, quite effective in helping memory retention, improving students' interest in learning, as well as making passive students to be more active in class. With regard to the methods of this research, the sample for this research was 14 students from a Tahfiz school in Sungai Petani, Kedah. Age range of the sample was around 13 to 16 years old, and all of them are supposed to sit for SPM examination before they end their Tahfiz school education. With regard to the data collection method, we are using mixed method of data collection. For the quantitative part, we are using a questionnaire, which was administered before and after the program. And we also have the qualitative part, which includes interview questions that was asked to 4 students at the end of the program. And of course, the interview was then transcribed, and the quantitative data from the survey was then analyzed descriptively for the mean score and standard deviation. So we are proceeding to the results. As you can see, these are the results from the questionnaire. And the item in the blue colored column are the mean score for the 3 items. So as you can see, overall increments can be seen in the mean score for all 3 aspects. If we compare the pre-test and the post-test, we can see increments. For the first aspect, knowledge of program content, in the pre-test, the students rated themselves, the mean score was 1.86. But after the game-based language activity, they rated themselves as 4.21. Same goes to the second aspect, strengthening of attitude and personal development. The mean score increased to 4.14. The third aspect, lifelong learning and sharing of knowledge, the students rated themselves in the pre-test as 1.86, but there's an increment by the end of the game-based English language activity in which they rated themselves as 4.50. The same goes to the standard deviation except for the second aspect, in which the standard deviation decreased a little bit from 0.73 to 0.66. The decrease in standard deviation means that the data are more clustered around the mean, meaning that the data are less dispersed, and actually more students agree on the increment of the second aspect, the strengthening of attitude and personal development. We are moving on to the interview result. And the results of the interview strengthen our findings from the quantitative aspect. To support the improvement in terms of knowledge of program content, Student 1 mentioned that he got to learn a lot more about English language from the game-based activity. And he also got to play with his friends while using English language. On the other hand, student 2 mentioned that the game-based learning activity was very suitable for the students to learn English for their future. And student 3 mentioned that he learned many things, plenty of English language knowledge. And all these findings support the result just now that the game-based English language activity actually helped to improve the students' knowledge of content. With regard to the strengthening of attitude and personal development, Student 1 mentioned that he got to play with his friends while using English language, and they also got to work together in team. And Student 2 mentioned that he learned some entrepreneurial skills from the game-based activity, along with reading and writing skills. And all these strengthen the evidence found from our quantitative survey that the students also got the opportunity to strengthen their attitude and personal development through game-based English language activities. Moving on to the discussion. To explain the findings with regard to the content knowledge, the transition of their content knowledge that we can see in the pre-test and the post-test might be motivated by the diversified learning environment. Since the study method in Tahfiz schools normally centers on memorization and seriousness. And with regard to the attitude and personal development, in general, game-based language learning requires students to work together in groups with minimal restrictions, minimal limitations from the instructors or teachers. So maybe their preference to work with their peers is the factor leading to improvement in their attitude and personal development. And that's all for my presentation. Special credits goes to my fellow research team members. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.